Week 10 of the fantasy football season, and here's a few defense DST units I have as sleepers this week. The first one, the Jacksonville Jaguars. So the Jaguars, believe it or not, lead the league in turnovers is this defense. And right now, surprisingly out there in 80% of fantasy leagues. I know it's a tougher matchup versus San Francisco 49ers, one of the better offenses in the league, and they give up the least amount of fantasy points to DSTs on the season. But the last few weeks, like I mentioned before their bye week, in week 9, this Jaguar team went out there and put up double-digit fantasy points 3 weeks in a row. Week 6 versus Indianapolis, 20 points allowed, 3 sacks, 3 interceptions, a fumble recovery. Week 7 at the New Orleans Saints, 24 points allowed, a sack, and a pick 6 in that ball game. And then week 8 at the Pittsburgh Steelers, only 10 points allowed in that game, 3 sacks, 2 interceptions. So right now, playing great football is this Jacksonville Jaguar defense. They're creating a lot of turnovers, and obviously that's a big part of why they've won 5 games in a row is this Jaguar team. So this week here, definitely a tough matchup versus the Niners, but it's the Niners coming to town. And this Niner team, 3 games in a row going into the bye weeks. It's Jacksonville team creating turnovers, and Brock Purdy's numbers have gone down over the last few weeks, and the league's seeing more tape on him and figuring him out. I think this Jacksonville Jaguar team is a sleeper option. Could be a team that can make plays once again and have a good fantasy day. The next DST I have as a sleeper this week, the Arizona Cardinals. So the Arizona Cardinals with a decent matchup versus the Atlanta Falcons. So this Falcon offense, it really hasn't done much all season. Desmond Ridder, they finally pulled him as the quarterback. Taylor Heineke, the quarterback, and he's looked decent over the last 2 weeks. But this Falcon team gives up the 9th most fantasy points to DSTs on the season. So right now, I know Arizona all season, teams have gone up and down the field from mid-20s, low 30s scoring each and every week. So the last 2 weeks, like I said, we haven't seen much from this defense. Week 8 versus Baltimore, 31 points allowed, 4 sacks. And then week 9 at Cleveland, 27 points allowed and a sack. But this week, reinforcements definitely on the way. Kyler Murray most likely playing in this game. And James Conner, I think, could play in this game as well. So right now, if this offense stays on the field a little bit longer, obviously that's a fresher defense, and it helps a defense that could go out there and make some plays, especially feeling good that the offense is putting points on the board. So right now, if you need a defense in deeper leagues, I think Arizona is obviously a desperate sleeper play, isn't the worst in the world. So they're available 99% of fantasy leagues. And the final defense DST unit I have as a sleeper is the Indianapolis Colts. So this Colts team, last week I recommended them as a team to get, and last week they didn't disappoint as well. Indianapolis at Carolina, 13 points allowed, 4 sacks, 3 INTs, and 2 pick sixes by Moore in that one. So this week a good matchup in Germany at the New England Patriots. I give up the 2nd most fantasy points to DSTs on the season. So still out there in 80% of fantasy leagues is this Indianapolis Colts team. I know it's a streaming option versus a weak offense. Mac Jones not looking all that great this season. Not much in the receiving core. And Ramondre Stevenson's been good this season, but he's still been a player that teams have held on in check for the most part. So right now, Indianapolis, after coming off a good game and still out there in 80% of fantasy leagues, they're definitely a sleeper option this week. So that's a few defense DST units I have as sleepers for week 10 of the fantasy football season.